Greetings, wealth makers. We are and masterminders. We are looking again at Brendan Borchard's amazing research on how top habits for high performers. And obviously, we're on this call because that's what we want to be. We want to really be living our greatness and performing to our best. So, anything that we can engage with in terms of knowing how to do that is something we definitely are interested in. I made a couple of notes here, so if this pops up on the screen, forgive me. You might see a few spelling mistakes, but yeah, it's much easier for me to obviously read from some notes. So what we've been talking about so much so far has been that being a high performer, they are known to really think a lot about envisaging the future. So it's not about staying in the past, it's not about wallowing in failure, it's about engaging with the future. So we need to dream lofty dreams, and as you envisage those dreams, so you will become. So he says that high performers are very clear on the intentions for themselves, which he launches into a category called self, or thinking about your future self. They're very conscious about their social world and how they interact with other people. And they focus on their skills. What are the skill sets that you actually need to be the kind of person you want to be? And service. They're very focused on leaving a legacy and the kind of service that makes a difference in the world, that really impacts other people. So last week we started with looking at self and know thyself. Oh gosh, I'm not sure what happened there. Okay, know thyself. So the difference between looking at the difference between knowing ourselves and imagining ourselves. So it's not just about introspection, it's about having real intentions about what our future self looks like. Envisaging who we want to be with this awareness, but importantly, doing something towards getting actively engaged in being those kind of people we really want to be. So being more intentional about who we want to be. And three of the words that he has coined and asks himself every night before going to sleep is live, love, and matter. So he asks himself, have I really lived today? Have I really loved today? Have I really done anything that actually matters? So live, love, and matters. And those three questions he's asked himself over 2 years now. And in our last session last week, we thought about 3 words that describe our future self. And my ones were life changer, writer, and being trusted. And he actually talks about putting these 3 words as a screensaver on your computer or on your phone, so that every time your screensaver comes up, you see the words of the kind of person that you want to be into the future. And then he asked us to think about what are 3 aspirational words we would have if we were actually being who we want to be, if we're actually performing how we want to in the future. So for me, there was energized, successful, wealthy, and I know all of you had various other ones. And then in terms of how to treat others, we also had a look at that. We wrote down how it is we would most like to be treated. And then we turned that around a bit to think about, well, that's how other people would also like to be treated. So some of the words that come up with respect, gentle, thoughtful, understanding, as opposed to being judged, compassion, those were all really important ways in which we wanted to be treated. And we also we thought that would be important to treat other people that way. And very interestingly, he tells of a field study that was done of 200 couples in the USA who are still married 40 years later and who are still happy. And actually one of the main things that they described was respect. they had respect for one another. And I guess respect means positive regard, respect means consideration, respect means realizing you have needs and the other person has needs, and being respectful of that and working around that, negotiating that. And then, interestingly enough, the 4 words that people expressed were most common characteristics in divorce situations was, where did I write that? Is criticalness, stonewalling, defensiveness. So all words that talk about disrespect or devaluing. And then we began a little bit last week to look at the social aspect. So we looked at the, we talked about these 4 categories now. When we're thinking about the future, what kind of person do we want to be? So now we're looking at the social category. How do we really want to interact with people? How intentional are we going to be with our relationships with ourselves, but also how we treat other people? And he says that high performers are very intentional about how they treat other people because they want to make an impact. They want to make a difference. They want to leave a legacy. So they're not going to treat people without thoughtfulness, without consideration, because that's exactly what their aim is, to make a big impact in the world. And he brings up a challenge that is probably true for most of us. And the challenge is, so often we are juggling so many balls in the air that we forget to even think about the future. We're so busy just trying to survive, just trying to get the daily tasks done, that we stop thinking about the future. We stop thinking about what's going to make an impact, what is going to be meaningful. And he says it's actually quite a common characteristic of most high achievers, is that they're often stretched very thin. And they often think, if only they had more time, if only we had more time. And actually he says you've actually got to think more about quality than quantity. Okay, so he encourages us to take a look at 3 at an activity. Let me just move my page over here a bit. Scroll down a bit. Okay, here we go. So the activity goes something like this. So if you've got pen and paper, write down each person's name in your immediate family and team. I'm just going to write that. Yeah, I suppose I better not write it all over my screen for you to see. Let me just grab a piece of paper quickly. Okay. So if you write down, the people that matter to you in your immediate family circle, in your teams. Yeah, for me, that would be quite a few people. I'm not sure about anybody else out there. Okay. Just could I ask everybody to put yourselves on mute? Let me just see if I can do that quickly. Okay, there we go. All right. So you've written down the names of everybody. The next thing is, imagine in 2 years' time, each person is saying, imagine in 2 years' time, if you were speaking to each of those people, oh, sorry, it's actually meant to be 20 years' time. 20 years' time. What would those people say why they loved and respected you? Can you think of 3 words that you would like them to be saying about you in 20 years' time? Those people that are close to you and your family, your team, what 3 words would you most like them to be saying about you? Anybody want to just minimize this a bit? I'm going to unmute you all now. Anybody like to share what those 3 words might be? What would you like the people who are closest to you that you care most about? What are the 3 things you would like them to be saying most often about you in 20 years' time? Anybody care to say any of those 3 words? If you'd like to unmute yourself, I have tried to unmute you all. Okay, yes, his participants are all unmuted. Okay, sorry, I've just got to unlock the door for my daughter. Hold on a minute. Sorry.
Well, even if you did have it in the back.
No, I've got it.
Oh.
Yeah, sure. Okay, should I start with what I said? Okay, so I said the 3 words that I'd like to know would be trusted, caring, and I don't know what the right word for this would be, but just energizing or influence people to be their best. Any other words or thoughts?
Sure. I had compassionate, respectful, and insightful.
Compassionate, respectful, and insightful.
Yes.
Nice. Anybody else like to volunteer a couple of?
I put caring, supportive, and I think respected, really, because I think it's such a strong word.
It is amazing how much it's come up this evening.
Yeah, it just covers so much.
It does. It does. Okay, let's continue. Let me just find my notes here. All right. So then the 3rd thing he encourages is next time you're with any of these people on your A list, make sure you take time to challenge yourself to be this kind of person now. And he says it's actually amazing how much it'll bring so much life back into relationships. I quite like that activity, actually. Okay, now we're moving into the 3rd section of what highly successful people focus on, and when they're thinking about the future, and that is their skills. So it's not just about thinking, okay, this is who I'd like to be in the future, or this is what I'd like to achieve. But what are the actual skills that you really need to be able to do that? And do you take that so seriously that you've actually blocked out time for learning in those 3 particular areas? He's getting you to think of what is your primary field of interest. So what is this? What is the field of interest that you're actually most passionate about? So it might be being a writer, it might be a blogger. So it's not just what intrigued you or what you're already trained in, but what is your passion? What is your primary field of interest? And then to really ask yourselves, are you actually looking for the skills that would make you successful in that area of interest? So if you're a writer, are you were you into personal development? Do you have your own coach? Are you looking for mentors in that particular area? Are you attending workshops where you're going to gain skills in that particular area? You know, what are you doing to really develop that professional field of interest so that it changes from being just a passion to something that's actually really going to make a difference? And then he encourages, let me go back to my notes again. He encourages you not to be just a generalist, but actually a specialist. So there are a lot of writers, there are a lot of bloggers, there are a lot of doctors, there are a lot of dentists. There are a lot of people in the same profession that we might have a particular field of interest in. So what is it that's going to make you stand out? What is it that's going to bring out your uniqueness? For example, he gave his an example. He wanted to be his professional field of interest was personal development. So he attended a lot of seminars, and then he realized that he needed to shift his professional field of interest to marketing, but not just marketing in general, but setting up his own brand. So he didn't just focus on everything about marketing. He focused specifically on how to do an email campaign and how to do good videos. And then with that expertise that he gained, he created a certain area where he would put his videos and people would pay to have access to those videos and to gain from his professional expertise. So again, that's just a very important thing to think about. What are those skills? But also very, very importantly, not just what are those skills now, but what are those skills going to look like in 5-10 years' time? You might need specific skills now, but in 5-10 years' time, what does that look like? What's going to make this the way in which you're operating in the world something unique, something where you stand out, a real game changer. And then put that into action. Don't just say, okay, these are the skills I need. Sometime I'll get around to finding a mentor. Sometimes I'll get around to going to a workshop. Actually, right now, set up a curriculum as to what times in your day are you going to focus on developing those skills. And then stick to that curriculum. Be disciplined, be continuous with it, be consistent with it, and make it a really important priority. He says if you leave your growth to randomness, you'll always live in the land of mediocrity. I don't think anybody on this call really wants to be mediocre. Okay.
Say that sentence again, please.
Sorry?
Can you say that sentence again?
If don't leave your where is it now? If you leave your growth to randomness, you'll always live in the land of mediocrity.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Quite a astute comment, actually.
Yep.
Can I move on, or are people needing a little bit more time to write things down?
Keep going.
Keep going. Okay. So we're now looking at when you're thinking about the future as a high performer. We're looking at how are we going to serve people? Do you think you're making a difference to others, or your days just a long kind of experience of completing tasks? So are you doing it with your diligence and your heart because you really care about what you are doing and how it's impacting and how circumstances are or aren't changing because of how you're performing in the world? And he says often people who underperform are those who don't care about their actions or the consequences of their actions. And he really encourages leaders to constantly be helping the people on your A-list, people in your family, the people in your team, to think about the future and to think about what are the skills they need, what are the ways in which they need to act, what is going to be of value to them to be able to kind of make their future what it is they want, but what's going to make a difference to others. And he says, high performers focus on relevance, differentiation, and excellence. So relevance is eliminating things that don't really matter anymore. So don't hang around in the past, don't hang around with past failures, constantly needing to look forward. But thinking about, what do I need to do? How do I need to deliver this? How can I do it so it offers the most value? And then differentiation, asking what's going to make you stand out? What's going to make you unique? What about you is going to really add value in the world? And then I quite like what he says about excellence, that excellence comes from an internal standard of how I can deliver beyond what is expected of me. He says those who don't strive after excellence are usually asking questions like, how can I do the least that I can and get the best out of this? Or, it's more about the person than it is about the service. So excellence often focuses on others and on making an impact, whereas when you're self-serving, you often don't have that same drive for excellence. Okay, so from what we've chatted about so far, is there any comments, any questions? Everyone happy? Okay, so now I'm going to go to the audio book, and he's got performance prompts. So they kind of just like completing a sentence. Well, that's how I understand it to be. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we are going to go to Brendan himself. And I'm just going to click here and have pen and paper ready. If it's going too fast, like just shout, and I can always stop it. But this is, let's have a look at those performance prompts.
These prompts are sentence completion activities that will help you reflect further on the important concepts you're learning. I highly recommend you write out and complete each of these statements in a step.
Okay, sorry, I can just hear somebody's not muted. So I'm just going to go mute all again. There's like a bit of a background noise. Did you hear that, or was it just my... You did hear it. Okay. Can you share the screen again? I think it's still there, so it might just be the internet.
Journal. If you would like a companion workbook with all the prompts included and more space for reflection, visit highperformancehabits.com/tools. That's highperformancehabits.com/tools. Whether you use the worksheet or just grab a journal of your own and freeform your thoughts, I suggest you sit and write out what you want of life. No goals, no growth, no clarity, no change. Performance prompts. These are the sentences you should complete. Number 1, when I think about the future for self, social, skill, and service, the area that I haven't had as much intention in as I should is... Number 2, the areas in which I have not been considering those I serve and lead are... Number 3, to leave a lasting legacy, the contributions I can start making now are... Practice 2, determine the feeling you're after. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. Howard Thurman. The second practice that will help you heighten and sustain clarity in your life is to ask yourself frequently, what is the primary feeling I want to bring to this situation? And what is the primary feeling I want to get from this situation? Most people are terrible at this. Underperformers especially are neglectful of the kinds of feelings they are experiencing or want to experience in life. They bumble into situations and allow those situations to define how they feel. This explains why they have low self-awareness and weak self-control. High performers demonstrate a tremendous degree of emotional intelligence and what I call willful feeling. In performance situations, they can accurately describe their emotions, but more importantly, they can also calibrate the meaning they draw from those emotions and determine the feelings they want to endure. Let me give you an example. I worked with an Olympic sprinter who was at the top of his game that year. But in prior years, his performance was often erratic. Sometimes he won a competition, other times he didn't even make the qualifying cut. When I got the call to work with him, he had a year-long winning streak. In our first session together, I asked, if you had to describe why you're winning now in just 3 words, what would they be? He said, feeling, feeling, feeling. When I asked him to explain, he said, I got very clear about the feelings I needed in my mind and my body before I walked out onto the field. While I readied myself at the starting blocks, what I sensed in the middle of the sprint, and what I wanted to feel after I crossed the line, and even all the way back into the tunnel. I asked if that meant he got control of his emotions and didn't experience performance anxiety anymore. He laughed. No, when I'm at the starting blocks, my body still senses the energy and emotion of it all. My body is naturally aware of what's at stake, and there's an emotion of some fear that's there no matter what. But I don't feel anxious. I define the feeling. I tell myself what I'm sensing is a feeling of readiness, excitement. I've heard so many high performers describe this practice in some form or another. They can sense their emotional state in any given moment, but they often choose to override it by defining what they want to feel. Let's pause to differentiate between emotions and feelings. While researchers differ in their definitions of what an emotion is, many agree that emotions are different from feelings. Emotions are generally instinctive. A triggering event, which can be an external situation or simply our brain anticipating something, generates an emotional response like fear, amusement, sadness, anger, relief, or love. Often, the emotional response happens without much of our conscious will. We just suddenly feel the emotion because our brain interpreted something happening and attached a meaning and emotion to it, guided mostly from how we sense the situation from the past. This doesn't mean that we are conscious of all our emotions or that we can't also generate an emotion consciously. For example, seeing your baby smile at you may stir joy in your heart, but you could also elicit the emotion of joy simply by purposely thinking about the same incident later on without the actual stimulus. Still, the vast majority of the emotions we feel in life are automatic and physical. The word feeling here is used to refer to a mental portrayal of an emotion. This is not a precise statement, but it's helpful for our purposes here. Think of an emotion as mostly a reaction, and feeling is an interpretation. Like the sprinter, the emotion of fear came up, but you don't have to choose to feel frightened and run away. You can experience the sudden emotion of fear, but in the very next moment choose to feel centered. Whenever you calm yourself down, you are choosing a different feeling than the emotion that may have come up for you. Before entering any performance situation, high performers contemplate how they want to feel regardless of what emotions might come up, and they envision how they want to feel leaving the situation regardless of what emotions might come up. Then they exert self-control to achieve those intentions. Here's another example that shows this dynamic at play. If I'm in a meeting and people suddenly start arguing with a negative tone, I'll probably experience immediate emotions like fear, anger, or sadness. The response is pretty predictable. My heart will start pounding, my hands will get sweaty, my breathing will get shallow. Those emotions can soon evoke feelings of dread or anxiety. Knowing this, I can choose to feel differently in the meeting, even if those emotions come up instinctively. I can tell myself that the emotions are just telling me to pay attention or to speak up for myself or to feel empathetic toward others. Instead of allowing the emotion to evoke the feeling of dread, I can just let it be. Take a few deep breaths and choose to feel alert, yet calm. I can keep breathing deeply, speak in an even tone, sit comfortably in my chair, think positively about the people in the room, choose to be a calm force amid the storm. All these choices generate a feeling that's different from what came up earlier. My automatic emotions don't have to be in charge. My feelings are my own. Over time, if I choose to create the feelings I want from my emotions, my brain will likely habituate to the new feelings. Fear suddenly doesn't feel so bad anymore because my brain has learned that I'll deal with it well. My old references for how I feel after the emotion has changed, and that can change the actual automatic emotion's power. The emotion of fear still might get triggered, but now the feeling I sense from it is what I've created in the past. Emotions come and go. They're mostly immediate, instinctive, and physical. But feelings last, and they're often a result of rumination, which you have control over. Anger can be the emotion that comes up, but bitterness, a lasting feeling, doesn't have to be your lifelong sentence. This might sound as if I'm just parsing words, and again, I acknowledge that my descriptions are imprecise. No description of any function of mind or body can be precise because there is always variance, and no thought or emotion is an island. Our senses and intentions interact and overlap across a vast neural network. But I share this here because it's so thoroughly obvious that high performers are generating the feelings they want more often than taking the emotions that land on them. When high-performing athletes say they are trying to get in the zone, what they mean is that they're trying to use their conscious attention to narrow their focus and feel in the zone. Being in the zone is not an emotion that just happens. Athletes will themselves there by minimizing distractions and immersing themselves in what they are doing. For high-level athletes and high performers from all walks of life, flow is a feeling they choose. It is summoned, not a lucky emotion that conveniently happens to show up just in time for kickoff. It's when we stop being conscious of our feelings that we get in trouble. Then the negativity of the world can start stirring negative emotions, which, if we don't control the meaning of, can evoke long-term negative feelings, which in turn set the stage for a horrible life. But if we seek to experience life and all its emotions, and yet choose to feel centered, happy, strong, and loving right through the ups and downs, then we've accomplished something powerful. We've wielded the power of willful feeling, and suddenly life feels the way we want it to. That's what Kate had been forgetting. She was too lost in a sea of unpredictable emotions. She wasn't choosing to feel any one way over another. She wasn't aware of how she was treating the emotions and experiences, and so she just became reactive. She wasn't just going through the motions, she was going through the emotions. So she wasn't really feeling life the way she wanted to anymore. All I had to do was get her to choose how she wanted to feel in each situation she entered. And that intention activity alone brought more vibrancy and color back into her life. In your everyday life, start asking, what do I want to feel today? How could I define the meaning of the day so that I feel what I want to? Next time you go on a date with someone, think about the feelings you want to create. Before you sit down with your child to work on math, ask, what do I want to feel when I'm helping my kid? What feelings do I want them to have about me, about homework, about their life? This kind of clarity and intention will change how you experience life. Performance prompts. Number 1, the emotions I've been experiencing a lot of lately are. Number 2, the areas of life where I'm not having the feelings I want to are. Number 3, the feelings I want to experience more of in life include. Number 4, the next time I feel a negative emotion come up, the first thing I'm going to say to myself is. Practice 3, define what's meaningful. Unhappiness is not knowing what we want and killing ourselves to get it. Don Harrell. High performers can do almost anything they set their heart and mind to, but not every mountain is worth the climb. What differentiates high performers from others is their critical eye in figuring out what is going to be meaningful to their life experience. They spend more time doing things that they find meaningful, and this makes them happy. It's not one of strength that locks us into unlived lives. Rather, it is lack of a decisive cause, something worth striving for, an ambitious purpose that sets our hearts ablaze and our feet marching forward. Our striving for a meaningful life is one of the main factors associated with psychological well-being. But what do we mean by meaning? When most people talk about having meaning at work, they typically discuss A, enjoyment of the tasks of work, B, alignment of personal values with the work, and C, fulfillment from the outcomes of the work. When researchers try to identify what is meaningful to people, they often focus on how important you say an activity is to you, how much time you spend at it, how committed you are, how attached to it you are, and whether you would do the work despite low compensation. They try to figure out whether you see the work as just a job or an important career or calling. They often associate a clear sense of purpose with an overall sense of meaning in life. Do high performers approach meaning the same way? We randomly selected 1,300 individuals who scored in the top 15% on the HPI and asked them questions such as, how do you know when you're doing something meaningful? What does it feel like? If you had to choose between two good projects, how would you go about choosing the one that would be most meaningful to you? How do you know when you're doing something that isn't bringing meaning into your life? At the end of your life, how would you know whether you had lived a meaningful life? Since the questions were open-ended, we combed through the responses looking for patterns. What emerged was that high performers tended to equate 4 factors with meaning. First, they linked enthusiasm with meaning. When forced to choose between 2 projects, for example, many mentioned they would do the one they could be most enthusiastic about. This finding dovetails with research findings that enthusiasm independently predicted life satisfaction, positive emotions, fewer negative emotions, environmental mastery, personal growth, positive relations, self-acceptance, purpose in life, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, and achievement. Clearly, if you want a positive life, you would do well to summon as much enthusiasm as possible. It was these feelings that inspired me to ask myself this question every morning in the shower. What can I get excited or enthusiastic about today? That simple question has changed the way I walk into each day. Try it. The second link to meaning was connection. People who become socially isolated report that their life has lost meaning. Social relationships, especially with those closest to us, are the most frequently reported sources of meaning in life. Like everyone else, high performers value the relationships they have in life and work. What's unique about high performers, though, is that connection often correlates with meaning, especially at work. Connection is less about comfort than about challenge. In other words, high performers feel that their work has more meaning when they are in a peer group that challenges them. In their everyday life, too, they value being around inspiring people who push them to grow more than, say, people who are just fun to be around or are generally kind. Third, high performers relate satisfaction with meaning. If what they are doing creates a sense of personal satisfaction, they feel that their life is more meaningful. Teasing out what satisfaction means to people is as difficult as finding out how they define meaningful. But for high performers, there is a clear equation for what leads to personal satisfaction. When your efforts correspond with one of your primary passions, lead to personal or professional growth, and make a clear and positive contribution to others, you tend to call those efforts satisfying. There's a formula in the book on page 86, and it's this one. Passion plus growth plus contribution equals personal satisfaction. Other researchers have found that security, autonomy, and balance can also be important to satisfaction, especially on the job. The fourth way that high performers say their efforts have meaning is by making them feel that their life makes sense. Psychologists call this coherence. It means that the story of your life or of the recent events in your life is comprehensible to you in some way. This sense of coherence seems to be particularly important to high performers. They want to know that their efforts align with something important, that their work is significant, and that their lives are creating a legacy and feeding a larger purpose. Often the desire for things to make sense is more important to a high performer than our autonomy and balance. They will put their own desires for control or work-life balance aside if they sense that what they are doing makes sense and adds to a greater whole. Certainly, more research needs to be done on how high performers view meaning. The research my team and I have conducted gives us a good start, though. You may find this simple equation helpful. Enthusiasm plus connection plus satisfaction plus coherence equals meaning. Again, that's enthusiasm plus connection plus satisfaction plus coherence equals meaning. Not all of these factors need to be in play at once to give us a sense of meaning. Sometimes just watching your child walk across a room can do it, or finishing that important report. A lovely date night or hosting a mentoring lunch can make life meaningful. The important thing is this: you need to bring more conscious and consistent thought to what you will find meaningful in life. You start by exploring your own definitions of meaning and how to enhance it in your life. When you learn the difference between busy work and your life's work, that's the first step on the path of purpose. Performance problems. Number 1, the activities that I currently do that bring me the most meaning are. Number 2, the activities or projects that I should stop doing because they are not bringing me any sense of meaning are. Number 3, if I was going to add new activities that bring me more meaning, the first ones I would add would be putting it all together. The meaning of life is whatever you ascribe to it. Joseph Campbell. You have to have a vision for yourself in the future. You have to discern how you want to feel and what will be meaningful to you. Without those practices, you have nothing to dream of and strive for. No pop and zest in your daily life propelling you forward. We've covered a lot in this chapter. How do we put all these practices together so that our practices for clarity are strong and consistent? I recommend the same thing I did for Kate, who felt that she was just going through the motions in her work, her relationships, and her life. You'll recall that she was so good, she didn't really need to try anymore. She forgot to look to the future and have strong intentions, which led her to being busy but unfulfilled. It led her to feeling lost. To help her reorient herself, I had her begin a simple habit of contemplation that would hit all the practices you've learned in this chapter. I gave Kate a tool called the Clarity Chart. It's a one-page journal sheet that I asked her to fill out every Sunday evening for 12 weeks. You can find the short version in the book, and you can download the full-page version at highperformancehabits.com/tools. That's highperformancehabits.com/tools. Of course, you don't need to fill out the chart every week. You don't have to do anything I'm suggesting. But I promise that this activity will help you, even if your responses don't change much from week to week. High performance clarity happens because we put these concepts up onto the dashboard of our conscious mind. Perhaps you've given occasional thought to the concepts we've discovered in this chapter, but our goal is to focus on these things more consistently than you ever have before. That's what moves the needle. With greater focus will come greater clarity, and with greater clarity will come more consistent action and ultimately high performance. The Clarity Chart. Download a printable weekly version at highperformancehabits.com/tools. In the book, it's on page 95. And on page 95, you'll see a chart with 6 boxes. One box says self, another says social, another says skills, another says service. the very things we covered in practice 1, self, social, skills, and service. Practice 2, you'll see a box for focusing on the feeling. Practice 3, you'll see a box for defining what's meaningful. Again, you can get this chart at highperformancehabits.com/tools. High performance habit number 2, generate energy. The world belongs to me.
Okay, so I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm learning so much from this research that Brendan Borchardt has done. And we're only just talking about clarity, which is one of the first of 6 habits. And it's so full of so much. So I quite like what he said, that in terms of clarity, clear purpose leads to high meaning. So one of the ways of getting that clear purpose is focusing on all those areas. Self, social, skills, creating meaning in life, and then what do you feel and what is meaningful. I can still hear, let me just kind of mute everybody again. I don't know, maybe it's me. I think there might be an echo. Okay. So yeah, so I quite liked where we ended. What I like about him always is he's quite strategic, but he also very much encourages us to be aware, to be conscious, and he gives us tools to be able to work through all the different strategies that he is talking about. And I like what he says about meaning, that enthusiasm, what are we enthusiastic about, plus connection, what makes us feel connected with ourselves, with other people, with our vision, with our dreams, what satisfies us, and what's coherent. I quite like that, because what always excites me and gives a sense of kind of synchronicity is this feeling like things make sense, that things all connect together, things have a story to them, and one step has followed the next step that has followed the next step, and there are dimensions that have kind of added to that maybe we hadn't even thought about, but as we kind of take that step into the right direction, it's amazing how Paulo Coelho's book, The Alchemist, and he kind of says when you're taking a step in the right direction, you're like connected with yourself, with your vision, with your dreams. For me, with God, it's amazing how God and the whole universe comes aboard to support that in ways beyond what we ever could have dreamed were possible. So thanks for joining me this evening. I hope you got as much out of this as I did. I think what I'll do, because the kind of visual of this wasn't great, I'm going to send it as a recording, as an audio recording. And I think what will be helpful, I don't know, I'll think about this in the week, but to go to highperformancehabits.com and look for that clarity chart, fill it out, give it a go, look at what are the performance prompts, answer those questions. And maybe next week can be just more of a workshop as a completion of the focus on clarity. I think as I'm talking, as I'm standing on my feet, that's the way we're going to go. I have no idea what next Monday night looks like for me, but I will stay in touch with everybody and see what's possible and what isn't possible. But if it doesn't happen next Monday night, well, then the following Monday night. So yeah, let's try and go to those particular tools that he's given us, highperformancehabits.com/tools. Look for the performance prompts around clarity and look for that actual clarity sheet and complete it. And let's just have a general discussion next week. That would be really cool. Okay, anybody got anything? I'm going to unmute everybody. Anybody got anything they urgently want to say or ask? Okay, all stunned into silence.
A lot to chew on.
What's that, Anne?
A lot to chew on.
Yeah, I agree. It's so packed, I must admit. So it's going to be quite nice to have a week to kind of go through it. So yeah, I've unmuted everybody. You can unmute yourselves. You can all say good night. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and yeah, see you next week.
Thanks,
Bye.
Mandy.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hi and bye, Adam. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.